drugs. First, I want to say, do not judge because of someone's beard. I hope that we can, in our society, before I talk about drugs, I want to make a mention to that. This isn't really a beard, this is more like some sort of facial hair, and it's not grown into a full beard yet. Not that I hope that we could come to not discriminate because whether or not someone has a beard or does not have a beard. Now, I will say this, it's my personal feeling that if there's a private employer and his policy is, well, you gotta dress a certain dress code and you want a clean shaven face if you want to work here, I respect that because I believe that that's his private business and I believe that that's part of his dress code. Some people may try to claim that that's a violation of your rights or blah, 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 but it's like, well, you don't have to work for that private guy. So I just wanted to say that. I know it's a whole nother topic, but it is somewhat related in that people are discriminated against. So, drugs. Yes, there are dangers of addictions. We all have different constitutions. Constitutions meaning, what you can handle, what your framework is, what your body is, your body chemistry, your genetics, all of that. Some guys can go out and have 10 beers or 5 beers and be fine. Whereas some guys go out and they'll have 2 beers and, whoa, that's a little even the maximum for them. So just to use that as a reference on, we each have our own constitution. Some people have different addiction levels than others in coordination with that. I personally, in my life, you can call it lucky or whatever, I never would have really had that kind of addiction. I could do a couple lines of cocaine and not be addicted to it and never want to do it again. So that's just me. Now, other people, like I said, may have problems. So my general statement is, I hope that we all come to this page, as long as someone, is not wrongly infringing upon another, they should have the right to use a particular drug substance. The right to nonviolent drug use. Coffee and sugar. Now, there are 2 things where, in my life, I remember this one time I was drinking this caffeine soda and I had a couple of them and I was with my dad and he kind of warned me like, oh, be careful with that. But you see, I didn't listen and I got such a massive headache because I was just chugging down these sodas. And I guess too much overload of the caffeine or who knows, whatever other chemical constituents they would have put in the sodas of the day. Alcohol, tobacco, 2 other legal substances today in my world where I would get headaches a lot of time when smoking tobacco, or even putting that, that they call that dip or whatever they call that, you put on your lip. And I would get such massive headaches. It was crazy. And then stomach aches, from drinking a lot of times you would get sick. If you overdo it or what have you, or even certain kinds of liquor cause me to become unstable more than other kinds of alcohol or liquor. So you have to kind of learn and know about your own constitution. So before I go into other drugs, let me say my personal preference is marijuana and what they call magic mushrooms, like psilocybin or psychedelic mushrooms, whatever they're termed as. So those are the 2 things. And in reality, we ask, are they drugs? I mean, they're plants, right? I mean, you can grow them. Mushrooms is like a fungus category, but it falls under, most scientists put that in the plant kingdom, just like as a subcategory. Again, we'll let the scientists tell you what category fungus get into. I'm not here to talk about that today. But those are the 2 things that I personally prefer, and in moderation. And just for the record, right now, I'm not using any drugs. I haven't since for a while now. I just, but I may in the near future take some mushrooms or some cannabis. I have a medical marijuana card here in California. That's where I'm at right now. So it does, on the medical level, it helps me when I have nausea and other things. So it is a valid medical use for me, but it is also a recreational, spiritual thing as well. It's like I don't think you can really say that it's one and not the other. It depends on your angle of use. And it's all about, again, in moderation. If I did magic mushrooms every day, it would lose its thrill. If I did it even every week or every month, it would lose its thrill. When I say I want to do magic mushrooms in the future, it's like something I'll do once or twice a year. That's just, again, my personal preference of how I want to spiritually engage with that plant and engage with my fellow man in the environment that I'm living in. And so this is just, ever since that's my view on using these quote unquote recreational substances. Many would come to say, well, Neil, you're talking more about spiritual use. And I'm like, potentially I am. Potentially I am. So let's talk about some other drugs that I've personally experienced. MDMA, also known as ecstasy or Molly as slang, can be in pill form, powder. I've never seen it in liquid form, but it may be, I don't know. Now that drug's an interesting drug. You can see why it's so popular. It makes you feel good. And in reality, I think it would be therapeutic. It's funny that they don't prescribe that for certain ailments, when in reality, this MDMA drug, I swear to God, it's more therapeutic than a lot of these other drugs that they are prescribing today. And I believe there are very valid medical uses of this MDMA drug. And that's just my statement after experiencing it and seeing the effects of it. For those of you who haven't experienced, you'd have to try it or take my word for it in the fact that I'm saying that there are potential medical uses for it that would be very valid. Once again, more valid than many of these other toxic substances that they're prescribing onto people today for certain conditions. I had this other substance, and it's now just to be clear, I usually, before I started using marijuana, I'm the guy down at the library looking in books, researching it, looking it up, doing this and that. You can check with my friends of the old days when I was in high school and stuff. I would research it. I'd want to know about it. Everything that I could know about it, I'd want to know about it before I tried it. And so that's how I was before I ever tried marijuana. Now, is it a lot safer to eat marijuana than smoke it? Yes. So I just want to throw that in too before we move ahead. There's application and use of substances and also with plants, it all depends on how it's grown too, right? Yeah, planes, I need an air-free zone. It's like no-fly zone. So now, as I got in, I became a little more experimental, and it was my decision. No one forced it on me. It was no peer pressure. It was me. I tried these substances known as, or this thing called microdots, which I don't know if it was mescaline or whatever it was, but it was pretty nice. And again, I don't know what it was, but it was such the smallest little thing, like that they call it a microdot. It was kind of similar to MDMA, but different. And I would say again that I believe there would be a therapeutic benefit. Okay, so now the other substances I'm going to mention beyond these two start to get a little more what I say you have to be a little more careful with. LSD, lysergic acid, or whatever it's called. There is, now with this, you have to kind of be careful and know that it's clean. I mean, I had some kind of stuff that was, I'm not going to say it just really didn't do anything and it was bad, or I'm not going to say it was bad, it just was like, okay, blah, it didn't do anything. But then there was a solid chemist who obviously knew what the hell they were doing, and I got some one time, and it was pretty amazing. It was pretty powerful, and it was all the stuff that people say, when you hear about it, like, oh, trip, it was, I wasn't seeing flying colors or anything like that. But it was pretty in depth and pretty amazing. And I don't know what else to say about that other than, am I glad? In retrospect, yeah, I'm glad to have experienced it. Is it something that I would want to do again? Not particularly. No, again, as I noted, I'm more of a plant man, marijuana and mushrooms, but I am glad to have experienced it. Another substance, cocaine. Now, before I ever did this, I sort of had some friends that were doing it, and I said, is it good? Is it clean? To the best of their ability, they assured me that it was, safe. And so, it's kind of funny that that's how I sort of tried that a few times. And it was what it was. So, again, it's kind of funny what I'm saying about it. Is it clean? You have to ask people if it's clean. The point is, if it was legal, right, we wouldn't have to worry as much about stuff being clean or polluted or dangerous because, well, it'd be legal and you could have it made safer. Capiche? So now I personally don't, I mean, I would use cocaine for medical things in the future, like the coca plant, the coca leaf. It has a numbing quality. I would like to think that there's many medical uses of that into the future. Now, putting it up your nose, it is true that if you put it up your nose, you could die on any given time that you shoot something up your nose like that. Boom, you could be dead. So I would tell anybody who's using cocaine up the nose today, you're taking a risk where you could die potentially at any given time. Of course, there's risks with lots of things. Driving your car out the street. But I mean, this is an extra risk that you're taking. And again, I'm a firm believer that should be a personal choice. It shouldn't be old Uncle Sam and the government trying to tell you what risks you, on your personal level, what you should or should not take. So to each his own. Now, however, there are some things I perceive to be not my cup of tea at all, and I would not want to personally try them, just from hearing about them and knowing enough about them. The stuff they call meth or heroin, those two substances. Now, it is true that I have not sampled such, so I would need to hear valid testimony from others who have used such. However, I only want to hear from those who do not have addictive personalities. We have already heard from all the addicts on this one. You see what I'm saying? You need to hear from the people who have the constitution where they don't have that addictive personality. Because again, we're all different. And one day we may make contact with all kinds of other people from around the universe, and heroin or meth may be their cup of tea. So I, as a man, have no right to tell another man what to do or not to do. I'm just choosing not to use meth. I guess it's short for methamphetamines or something, right? But I guess that can be, I don't know, that can be such a broad category. I don't know enough about that to talk about it. Or heroin. I don't want to personally use that. Sticking a syringe into my body and shooting myself up with a drug does not sound like a fun time. But again, to each their own. Now, I know people snort heroin too. That's a whole nother thing. Legal prescriptions. I cannot say I ever took a prescription painkiller. To my knowledge, I don't think I've ever taken one. I mean, unless it was when I was younger and they just gave it to me or put it on me when I didn't know about it. But I didn't take any in modern history or for recreation. To be honest with you, I don't know if I ever took any. Just on that level, I'll just say that. I don't know. I have sampled some of those Adderall pills that you guys give to kids who you say have ADHD or whatever the hell that's called. Will tell you, those are some powerful, wiry pills. They like jack you up. It's like mixing caffeine with cocaine or something, and some weird level like that. It just wasn't my cup of tea in general. If you had a long drive to do, maybe you'd pop one because it would keep you. It's like speed or something. I've never taken speed or what they call speed. I don't know. So obviously, I'm not talking about all drugs here. I'm just giving an overview. And just to hope to shed some light so when we move forward, there'll be some more light. I'm not sure if I would ever decide to do any drug such as peyote or other plant-like drugs. I would use caution and investigate such prior to use. As I mentioned, prior to doing marijuana, I was down at the library doing research. How many of you guys did that? Some of you may have. I'm just saying that point again, just so you know what kind of guy I am. And generally speaking, I was also taught responsibility. I was also taught responsibility from my dad and his loving friends. At least that's in my perspective of how I grew up. I believe that I was taught, just like responsible use of any substance, my dad and some of his friends, they taught me how to responsibly use marijuana. And I can say that, and I feel confident saying that that was a good thing. If it was more open in our society, just like alcohol, you could teach people more responsibility about things in that regard. So, responsible freedom. If we act responsibly and do not infringe upon another, why should you care if I do this or that, substance on my own property, right? I mean, that should be my own personal business. Someone else shouldn't tell me what substance on that level I should be able to do or not do, correct? I would hope we all come to that page. We're getting to the point of the world that I'm in today. We need to release our nonviolent drug offending brothers and sisters from incarceration. And that is the least I seek to attain. On top of that, I hope you guys cry tears. Literally, I know some of you may laugh at me here today, but Hope you cry tears over the fact that these brothers and sisters have been incarcerated for years on end. Pains and sufferings of that detainment. Again, I'm talking about nonviolent drug consumers, users, and manufacturers, people who are not involved in violence at all. They're basically caught up for possessing this substance, this drug. I will hope you will want to pay them back money. I can only hope. I'm just one guy. You know, it's going to have to be majority saying, yes, this is the right thing. This is what we want to do. I might, just as a rough note, we'll come up with a yearly stipend or something that we say, okay, for X amount of time, this is how much. And then we just write him a check and we're done with it. From old Uncle Sam. Again, we have to delineate violent versus nonviolent drug crimes. Now, there is a gray street area, perhaps. I mean, you could say there'd be numerous gray streets. And there'll be extenuating circumstances that we have to talk about, like if someone was directly involved in dealing to a minor, a child essentially. You could talk about all kinds of scenarios all day long. If I give to Jim, who is an adult, and then Jim gives to Jack, who is a minor, that is all on Jim as far as I'm concerned if I didn't know anything about it. So this group of people and categories, we may have to put in like limbo land and do a whole delineation, when we're talking about reparations and figure out, you really have to delineate it down and have a clear path. You see, the point of this video, I wanted to be full and inclusive in this whole process. Like we may say, okay, release those people, however, we may not want to pay them money back because of their involvement with dealing with the corruption of a minor issue. This corruption of a minor issue is just that. In the sense it could happen with alcohol or tobacco or firearms or pornography or sex or anything else that is legal today for adults. However, we are saying don't do this to minors. So again, thank you for your time. Just wanted to give an overview. I'm hoping that as a result of this and other things I'm involved in, if you see any of my other videos, I'm hoping we can just build a better world that's more clear, straightforward, something that's better for the children. Because don't you know, it really is all about the children and making a world that is safe, healthy, fair, and free for them. And I mean, it's funny, I'm starting out talking about beards and drugs, and then I'm talking about children because, well, it's all interrelated. What kind of world do we want? Where do we want to live? Hoping great peace by and through a greater understanding. And thank you for your time for tuning in.